My buddy goes and gets this new girlfriend, and she's absolutely leeching. All of our time that we used to spend together, basketball, hanging out, shooting some hoops, you name it, she's ruining it, so I'm going to get a bit of revenge. I'm going to tell her, no, I'm going to show her. That's my buddy, and you can kick rocks. So, I'm 18, male, and I'm on my last semester of high school. And like every senior, I'm stoked to graduate. I have no plans for college, but I've always wanted to enjoy the freedom of life and party once the whole high school ordeal's behind me. But as the date approaches, something dampened my spirits. Will, my best friend since diapers and from video games to playing basketball after school, we've done everything together. But recently, he started seeing Samantha from a different school, and I didn't know her, but from our initial interaction, I had mixed feelings. Will was head over heels, and for him that's enough, but for me, not so much. It started with small things. Basketball was our thing. Especially after a stressful day, it was very therapeutic. But there were times when we'd planned to hit the courts, and out of nowhere, Samantha would show up or call, and like magic, our plans would just vanish. Will would give me the same apologetic look and mutter something like, "Dude, I promised it won't be long," but it usually was. I'd be left shooting hoops alone, listening to the distant laughter of the new lovebirds. Now, I get it. New relationships can, be exhilarating, and you want to spend every moment together, but Samantha's control was something else. She would always have Will come to her, even though she knew that we had plans. It seemed like she made no effort to compromise or even get to know his life outside of their relationship. The worst part? I tried to understand and be there with him a few times, hoping that we could all hang out. But every time it turned into a make-out session. With me awkwardly sipping a bit of soda on the side, it was like I was invisible. Well, one time, Will and I planned a weekend trip to a cabin. It was a small graduation celebration that we've been planning. And, just some bro time. Before we hit the real world, everything was set. From food to the music playlist, but guess who decided to tag along? Yeah, Samantha. Now, I was okay with her coming along at first. Will and I spoke about it, and he promised that it would not be, unusual, and it would just be like our usual hangouts. But as soon as we arrived, they locked themselves in a room, and I was left alone with the beautiful wilderness and my festering annoyance. The tipping point was at our senior prom, though. Will and I had this pact to go as a wingman and have a blast. But days before, Will sheepishly told me he was going with Samantha. I put on a brave face, told him to have fun, and decided to go alone. That night, I saw them from across the dance floor, completely engrossed in each other, making memories that I thought I'd be a part of. I confronted Will the next day, emotions running high, and I told him how left out I felt, how I missed our hangouts, and how I felt like Samantha was driving a wedge between us. Will gets defensive at this point, saying I was just jealous and could not be happy for him. I reiterated it wasn't about jealousy, but about feeling replaced. We stopped talking for a few days now, and I'll keep you updated what happens next. Update number 1. Hey again, guys. I never expected my original post to blow up the way that it did. Thank you for the advice, encouragement, and the shared stories of similar experiences. I thought I'd give you an update about the situation with Will and Samantha. Sit tight, it's a crazy one. 2 weeks after my confrontation with Will, I decided to put my ego aside. The pain of losing my lifelong friend was more unbearable than any feud of his girlfriend. I approached Will. My emotions laid bare and apologized. Surprisingly, he looked genuinely relieved, and I suggested that to make amends, we go to watch the new John Wick movie. A guy's night, just like old times, stoked. I went ahead and booked our tickets right away. Throughout the week, things seemed almost back to normal. We chatted between classes, joked around, and our excitement for the movie night was definitely there. However, come Friday, I noticed Will's sudden shift in mood. Inevitably, he pulled me aside and dropped the bombshell. He could not make it to the movies because Samantha wanted to have her own date night. Guys, my heart absolutely sank. The betrayal felt raw, especially since I've already bought the tickets in advance. We had a heated exchange where I went ahead and mentioned that the pre-booked tickets and I don't know, in a move, Will offered to pay for them both. Although it did seem pretty petty. I took him up on the offer. I was hurt, angry, and honestly feeling used. It felt like every step I took to bridge our divide, Samantha was there just pulling him away. Saturday evening came around, and my anger had not subsided. I figured if I could not have my best friend by my side, at least I could indulge in some cinematic escapism. On impulse, I bought another solo ticket to see John Wick by myself, and the movie was great, but there was an undercurrent of sadness, wishing Will was there. Laughing, commenting, just being there. The movie ended, and as someone who hates missing out, I decided to stay for the post-credit scenes. As the theater began to empty out, I absent-mindedly watched the audience stroll out. That's when my heart stopped. From the top rows, Will and Samantha descended, hand in hand, laughing. They didn't even notice me. Rage, shock, betrayal, you name it. How could Will lie to me? And for the very same plan that we had? Did he really use the tickets that he bought from me? I wanted to confront them right then and there, but I held back. The last thing I wanted was another public scene. I left the theater that night with a heavy heart, and questions flooded my mind. How much of our repaired friendship was genuine? Were all of our moments merely filling the gaps when Samantha wasn't around? Could a relationship truly change somebody to this extent, or was I just seeing a side of Will I never knew existed? Now I'm torn. Do I confront Will about his blatant lie, or do I distance myself and start my post-high school journey on a new path? Either way, my trust is pretty much shattered. Update number 2. Alright guys, well, if you thought my last post was wild, this update definitely takes the cake. It's been 3 weeks since the movie theater incident, and my relationship with Will continues to be less and less. The pain of seeing my best friend morph into somebody I barely recognize has been unbearable. I became convinced that Samantha was the root of all this changing and wedges between us. Our interactions dwindled over the weeks, with Will offering a plethora of excuses from family stuff to homework. It always seemed like there's a reason we could not hang out, and as days turned into weeks, a bitter concoction of anger, jealousy, and desperation brewed. I knew I had to do something drastic to reclaim my buddy. One evening, a wild idea popped into my mind. What if I could make Samantha doubt Will's loyalty? I thought if I could engineer some kind of misunderstanding between them, perhaps it would give Will a wake-up call. Or, in the best-case scenario, lead them to break up. Not my proudest moment, but I felt cornered and pushed out of Will's life. The next morning, I secretly took a pair of women's underwear from my mother's drawer. Trust me, yeah, it feels as weird writing it as it did doing it. And I stuffed those panties into my book bag. At school, Will and I chatted as usual, and to make my plan work, I needed access to his car. So I asked him for a ride home, hoping to avoid the bus, and he agreed, and that was my window as fate would have it. Will also needed to stop for a bit of fuel. As he pumped the gas, I took my chance and discreetly placed the underwear in the door panel of the passenger side, hoping Samantha might spot it and draw her own conclusions. Well, my heart was pounding, and I silently cheered myself on for this sly move. Hours later, when I was at home, I sat down to work on my assignments, and guilt began to gnaw at me. Was I becoming the villain in this story? Sure. Samantha seemed to be pulling Will away, but did that justify stooping to such a devious level? The gravity of my actions weighed heavily on me, but a part of me clung to the hope that this would be the catalyst to return things to the way that they were. As I tossed and turned in my bed at night, my thoughts were starting to consume me. What if she did not see them and Will found them first? Would he even know that they were planted? What would he even think? I'll admit I'm scared. I don't know if I've done the right thing. Part of me desperately hopes my plan works, and another part wishes I could turn back time and undo my actions. I'm torn between wanting my old friend back and facing the monster I've become in the process. Update number 3. The day I dreaded the most has arrived, and it's even worse than I imagined. 2 weeks have passed since the underwear incident, and every day was a battle between the hope that everything would remain undiscovered, and, well, the guilt that gnawed away at me was still there, but in the silent war of emotions there was no victory. One fateful afternoon, Will cornered me by the school lockers with his eyes bloodshot and his face a mask of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. Before I could even utter a word, he thrust the damning evidence in my face. The woman's underwear I planted. Samantha broke up with me. She found these in my car. You know anything about it, man? I froze. This was the confrontation I had feared, and in a feeble attempt to save face, I blurted, "She's crazy, bro. Why would I have anything to do with it?" But as we locked eyes, the weight of my betrayal evident in every unsaid word, my defense crumbled, and the truth heavy and dark loomed between us. Why, dude? Why would you do this? I'm sorry, man. I did it. I was jealous. I felt left out. And I thought I don't know. Well, I don't know what I thought, but I never meant for this to happen, bro. He stared, the magnitude of betrayal sinking in, then with his biting sarcasm he said, "Thanks, man. Should never talk to me again because of your childish stunt." The next few days were a blur, and the school grapevine caught wind of the drama, and whispers followed me everywhere. "Did you hear what OP did? Can't believe he'd betray his best friend like that." I tried reaching out to Will, leaving text voicemail notes, trying to salvage the friendship I'd thrown away, but it was evident. The damage was irrevocable. Every attempt at an apology was met with cold silence or curt dismissal. My once close-knit group of friends seemed to drift away. Everyone was taking sides, and unsurprisingly, many sided with Will. The atmosphere was tense, and every lunch break, every class, every shared moment was filled with unsaid words, accusatory glances, and a heavy air of disappointment. One evening, sitting alone in my room, memories of all the good times with Will flooded back, and from shared secrets to late-night gaming sessions, the weight of what I'd lost crashed down on me. It wasn't just about losing my best friend, it was the guilt of knowing I was the architect of my own misery. I found myself questioning my actions daily. Was the jealousy worth it? Could I have been more mature about it? But every reflection led to one inescapable conclusion. I've been the villain in my chapter of this life. So guys, am I the a-hole for breaking up my buddy and his girlfriend? Comment number 1 from the original post says, "Honestly, if you were truly his friend, you would have celebrated his happiness rather than trying to sabotage it. Letting him experience love and making memories should have been a cherishing thing to witness as his friend. Purposely breaking them up was entirely out of line. Love is a beautiful thing, and it's painful to see it broken up by somebody's petty jealousy. OP, you are the a-hole." Comment number 2. I've been in OP's shoes before. It's hard when you feel left out and replaced by somebody new in your friend's life, but I wish OP had just spoken up about his feelings rather than resorting to such a scheme. Communicate, don't sabotage. I can't completely fault OP, because emotions run high, and we make rash decisions sometimes, and I don't see anyone as the clear-cut a-hole here, just a complicated situation. Comment number 3. Growing up is a challenge. We all go through phases with friends come and go, it's part of life. Seeing friends drift away, especially in senior year, can be heartbreaking. But OP, you're about to embark on a new phase of your life. Don't tarnish the memories of high school over one poor decision. Mistakes are a part of growing up, you know. While I wish you made a better judgment call as a senior, I also understand that emotions can be overwhelming, and I hope you and Will find a way to move forward. Best of luck to both of you. So, most of the comments of this story are saying how OP, well, you went a bit too far. I mean, you were going in between your best friend and his girlfriend, and you should be happy for your best friend, which makes you the a-hole for basically causing their relationship to be flushed down the toilet. Guys, I do want to hear your opinions on this story, and also we do have another story today. But first, go ahead, drop your thoughts down below what you would have done if you were in OP's position. Do you think OP went too far, or do you think OP should have been way more supportive of his friend? Story number 2 is titled, Am I the A-hole for handling with a high school bully at the lunch table by, well, doing something crazy to his burrito? Let's check out that story right now.
Hey, what's up everyone? So, I'm a 16-year-old sophomore in high school, and this year, I have not been as lucky as last year. The dreaded high school lunch roulette did me dirty and left me with an hour-long lunch period without any of my friends. Yeah, so imagine being alone in a cafeteria full of students laughing, shouting, and even gossiping. Sounds like a teenage nightmare, right? On my first day of this lonely lunch, as I call it, I desperately scanned the room for a familiar face or somebody I might know from my classes. Bingo! I recognized a fellow sophomore from my math class. He was sitting at a table with a mix of upperclassmen, and now I was a bit intimidated but figured, hey, this could be an opportunity to make some new friends. So, I decided to take a seat at the end of their table, and I tried to chime in occasionally, but mostly kept to myself, focusing on my work. Over the next few days, I got a decent idea of the group dynamics. That's when I became aware of Mason. Mason is in the 11th grade, and to put it mildly, he's a real piece of work. He seemed to enjoy being the alpha of the group, always pushing boundaries with pranks and teasing, and just taking it too far more than often. The other guys at the table seemed to either find him funny, or were just afraid of being his next target. I remember this one time. He was making a scene by squirting ketchup and mustard packets on unsuspecting students. Yeah, it was all over their back as they walked by. The poor victims would continue on unaware while Mason would laugh loudly, making sure everyone knew that he was the culprit. Another time, he snatched a freshman's cap, twirling it around his finger before tossing it into the trash can. It seemed he thrived on the laughter and attention of others. And the other upperclassmen at the table cheered him on, or even stayed silent, some of them, which only emboldened him further. Well, I mostly kept my head down. Even I was not immune to Mason's antics. One day, I made the, quote, mistake of leaving my tray unattended for a mere minute to grab some napkins. When I returned, my milk was gone. I glanced around and caught Mason smirking with my carton in hand, taking exaggerated sips while maintaining eye contact. I chose not to react, thinking that any acknowledgement might invite more torment. For weeks I endured and told myself that it's just lunch, just an hour out of my day. But every day, that hour started feeling longer and longer. The constant unease, the tense atmosphere, wondering if today would be the day Mason decides to turn this full attention to me. It made my stomach churn. It felt like sitting on a ticking time bomb, and I was just waiting for it to explode. To top it all off, the people around him, who I hoped might step in or at least not encourage him, never did. They either laughed along or sat in silent approval, making me wonder if they were really friends or just some sort of enabler. Anyways, dreading my lunch hour every day, wondering if I should switch tables or even confront Mason, or heck, just bear with it. I've held my tongue, kept my head down, but how long before I just can't anymore? What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So today's story starts off with a bully in the lunchroom. Well, you might be surprised how this one turns out. I have multiple updates for you. Make sure you're subscribed to Mr. Reddito's Revenge channel, and let's jump into update number 1. It's been 3 weeks since my last post, and a lot's happened since. Just want to start off and say thank you to everybody for showing me support on my last post. Your words mean a lot. I've really been trying to make the best of a situation, so I've been focusing on getting to know the other guys at the table a bit more. Luckily, the guy I share a math class with has turned out to be decent. We occasionally help each other with homework during lunch, and sometimes he just copies what I've done. It's a give and take, and I'm glad to have at least one person at the table who I can chit-chat with. But of course, that brings me to Mason. If you thought that he turned over a new leaf or something, you're wrong. He's still the loud, obnoxious kid at the table, always plotting his prank of the day. Most days, he's just an annoyance in the background of my day, like a fly buzzing around. But sometimes he still targets me specifically. He's taken to calling me poor because of the clothes I wear, and he occasionally mocks me for wearing glasses, asking if I see the world in HD, and other lame jokes. But he really outbid himself the other day. I was walking to class after lunch, feeling pretty good, actually. It wasn't until I sat down in the classroom that I felt something wet and sticky on the back of my jacket. Upon pulling it off, I realized there was mustard and ketchup squirted all down the back. My heart sank, and I knew instantly who was behind it. Mason. Again, I cleaned it off as best as I could, but I was so embarrassed. And then, just a few days ago, the straw that broke the camel's back happened. I set my things down at the table before standing in line for lunch, but when I returned, all my belongings were missing. My backpack, my books, all gone, and Mason sat there, a smug grin plastered across his face, giggling and watching me search frantically. I tried to keep my cool, hoping it was just a harmless prank and he'd give them back soon, but it was not until midway through the lunch period that Mason, still laughing with his cronies, pulled my stuff out of a nearby garbage can with my belongings covered in trash, leftover food, spilled drinks, you name it. He handed them back to me. Feigning ignorance, acting like he had no idea how they ended up in there. The other guys at the table, including my math class friend, just laughed. I was livid. I felt my face turn a bright red with my fist clenching involuntarily, but I bit my lip, held my tongue, and cleaned up my stuff. I did not want to cause a scene or give him the satisfaction of seeing me react, and that night I went home and the rage and humiliation just bubbled up. I wanted revenge. I wanted payback. I imagined all the ways that I could get even with Mason, so here I am, asking you guys what I should do next. Your advice helps me a lot, and I'm hoping you can guide me. I will update you soon. Update number 2. Okay, well, it's been a pretty much whirlwind since my last update 2 weeks ago, and man, do I have one to share. Following the advice of many of you, I tried to keep my head down and avoid Mason as much as possible. But as fate would have it, I stumbled upon an unplanned opportunity for payback. And let's just say I may have acted impulsively. One day, I showed up early to our lunch table, being Burrito Day. Not everyone's favorite, but hey, I liked it. My math buddy was the only one at the table at that time, and I gave him a heads up to watch the stuff, in case Mason had another trick up his sleeve. As everybody started trickling in, Mason arrived, clearly disgruntled by the day's menu of burritos. He sat his lunch tray down and announcing that, and I quote, he needed to lay some beans in the bathroom before tackling his meal. I can't say what exactly went through my mind in the moment that followed. Maybe it was weeks of suppressed rage or the perfect opportunity presenting itself, but as I glanced at my school bag and spotted my bottle of old Elmer's glue, non-toxic, a devilish idea flashed into my mind. Without overthinking, I grabbed the glue, rushed over to Mason's tray, and discreetly emptied the entire bottle into the burrito, making sure to roll it back up to look untouched. The table watched in stunned silence with their eyes wide with a mixture of horror and amazement. I could see a few suppressed smiles, but no one tried to stop me or even warn Mason. Mason returned, blissfully unaware, and the table was tense as he took his first bite. We all watched with bated breath, and then the magic moment arrived. His eyes widened in revulsion, his face contorted, and he spat out a mouthful of old glue-infused burrito bite. The entire cafeteria erupted in laughter. Mason's confusion and humiliation on full display. He demanded to know who would sabotage his meal, but to my surprise, everybody remained tight-lipped. Walking out of the lunchroom, I felt a bit of adrenaline. The tables had turned, and for once, Mason was the butt of the joke. As the day wore on, I began to feel a gnawing sensation in the pit of my stomach. Guilt? No. Fear of retaliation? I wasn't sure. I went home that day with a bit of mixed emotions. On one hand, I felt a deep satisfaction of having served Mason a taste of his own medicine, but on the other, the fear that something, might happen to me and somebody might spill the beans, no pun intended, about my involvement loomed large. What if Mason came up after me seeking revenge? Or some sort of vengeance? I'll keep you updated, but in the meantime, your advice is invaluable. Update number 3. Hello, back again with the hope that this is the final chapter of the so-called Mason drama. When I last updated, I was still reading, the comments and feeling a bit of impulsive, driven act of revenge and the uncertainty that followed. You guys offered mixed responses, which I'm not really happy about because a lot of people were arguing with each other saying, hey, I went too far, I didn't go far enough. Anyways, the past 2 weeks have been quite eventful, and I wanted to share how things unfolded. The initial days following the Burrito incident were tense, to say the least. I had this nagging feeling that Mason would find out if it was me or not, and lo and behold, somebody did spill the beans. Mason began dropping heavy-handed hints during lunch, shooting me these glare-filled looks, and the atmosphere at our table became a ticking time bomb. I knew Mason was going to retaliate, and I wanted no part of it. So, I did something pretty bold. I decided to go ahead and shift to a secluded table across the lunchroom, away from the looming shadow of Mason's prank and constant ridicule. I thought I'd be alone, but to my surprise, my math buddy was the first to join. And then, day by day, a few others trickled in. By the end of the week, our former table, once dominated by Mason's loud antics, had turned into a mini-exodus, as most of the guys made their way to what we jokingly began calling the Freedom Table. It was evident that many had grown weary of Mason's continuous disruptions, and were looking for some sort of a escape. At our new table, there was a sense of camaraderie. We'd laugh about the infamous glue burrito, chat about classes, share in jokes, and even talk about girls. On the other hand, looked visibly defeated was Mason. His prank started to wane, and his once enthusiastic audience now responded with indifference. It seemed like, the joke's on him. The transformation was pretty evident, and people weren't gaslighting Mason's antics anymore. Instead, we had genuine laughter, easygoing banter filled for our lunch hour, and I could not help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. Well, I don't know. Despite all the drama and changes, I often find myself pondering just one question, which I'll ask you guys about. Do I regret standing up to Mason? Well, the answer for me is not one bit. What I do wish, though, is that Mason would mature a bit. While the immediate gratification from the pranks was satisfying, the real win was showing everyone, including myself, that standing up to a school bully could shift dynamics in ways you would never really imagine. Thanks for sticking to me throughout the whole story. Much love. Comment number 1 from the final update says, Man, reading this took me right back to my high school days. I had a similar bully situation, and I totally get the pressure of having to stand up. Honestly, OP, commendable job. It seems like your response not only shifted the dynamics for the better, but also gave you some much-needed reprieve. In my opinion, definitely not the a-hole. Keep your head held high. Comment number 2. Okay, I have to admit, the glue in the burrito, genius. It's not venomous, poisonous, nothing that's going to hurt him, and it's probably disgusting. I'm just surprised that the glue did not permanently seal Mason's lip to prevent future pranks, LOL. Way to give him a dose of his own medicine. You've got my praise, OP. That's a prank for the history books at your school, not the a-hole. Comment number 3. In hindsight, there might have been other approaches to handle Mason, perhaps speaking to a guidance counselor, confronting Mason privately, or rallying support from your peers. It looks like your peers were on your side the whole time anyways. However, high school is tricky, and emotions run high. I'm just glad you found a way out of that daily torture. Not the a-hole. Good job standing up for yourself.
So, it looks like most of the commenters are saying not the a-hole, and I do have to agree with them. Maybe I wouldn't have handled the situation the exact same as OP by putting Elmer's glue in a burrito. I mean, I would have ate the burrito myself, if anything. Forget about putting glue in it. Maybe a little hot sauce. Anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts about it. Do you agree with most of these commenters who were saying, OP, you are not the a-hole and you just handled a bully because nobody else was? And it looks like all the friends at the table joined OP at the new table, so they were probably in agreement with him the whole time. Let me know your thoughts down below. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I do these revenge stories every single day. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.